To truly be is to be fearless. To be fearless in the face of all appearances. And most of the places we go in life, we are taught to fear ourselves and fear at least some of what appears. But a lot of this is really rooted in ourselves and what we're taught about our own inner content, so to speak, our thoughts and emotions and sensations about how we experience the world. So we're taught that some of our thoughts are good, wholesome and pure, and other of our thoughts are unwholesome and impure. And the same with emotions and experiences, and that in order to live a life of seeming freedom, then we need to conform to being a good person who accumulates more of the positive thoughts and fewer of the negative thoughts, and more of the positive emotions and fewer of the negative emotions. Yet there is never any freedom in any of that. So what we're taught to do with our thoughts and emotions are either to avoid the negative ones or to replace them with something positive. These are the two things we're taught. And both of these approaches are approaches of fear. These are approaches of fear. They're not approaches of openly wholesome, totally loving being. There's nothing whatsoever to fear about ourselves and what goes on within us. Just like in sky, there is nothing to fear. There's nothing whatsoever to fear. One part of sky isn't better than another part of sky. One part of sky doesn't need to be accumulated into a larger mass to offset a negative part of sky. And just like sky is, we are. And we are sky. We are sky. We take ourselves to be what we've learned ourselves to be from others. So we've been taught by others that we are something finite, stable, and solid. But that is only taught to us by those who never look beyond what is stable and solid, finite, and material. So this we could call one aspect of what appears, but if we only know that aspect of what appears, we always feel very incomplete in ourselves, and we always feel somehow that we're flawed and need to be fixed. The absolutely flawless nature of space is what we are comprised of. If I'm not just talking as a philosopher or as a scientist either. I'm talking about the way things are. Either through philosophy we can say everything is pure like space, or through science we can actually show today that anything that is comprised of space. We can put it in anything that is in a linear particle accelerator, and when it's broken down, we show that it is like space. So this is incontrovertible evidence. No matter how much anyone may try to prove the material existence of reality, it can never be shown to be, because wherever material existence is shown to be, it cannot be found to be. It cannot be found to have a nature independent of sky-like space. And because nothing that is can be found to be separate from sky-like space, then where is awareness? Where is awareness? Awareness is equal to sky-like space. It's the space itself that is aware. Awareness has never been generated within any kind of materiality, and it never will be. To say that, oh yes, awareness, it's generated by a biological organism, some kind of animal or whatever it may be, is incomplete. It's absolutely incomplete, because even though we are endowed with awareness, the awareness is not generated from within us. It's not a process that comes about through ovum and seed. This is not the way things are. If we look at any of these labels, what we can see about them is that all of them, no matter what they are empty of an independent nature. And it is in this that fearlessness is. Fearlessness is in this reality that everything is empty of an independent nature, that no matter what it is, it's absent of its own being. No matter what appears, it's never been made into anything that will last, that is permanent. And we can apply this not only to ourselves and our thoughts and emotions and our sensations as they appear and disappear in space, but we can also apply this to the physical materiality of our being as well. Just as we come into being as human beings for a time, we abide for a time, we will also disintegrate and disappear. So this is the law of impermanence. It's the law of impermanence that applies to everything. There's nothing that's stable and solid. Nothing whatsoever that's stable and solid. No matter what appears, it is subject to the law of impermanence, no matter how solid and stable it may be. And in the reality of our own being, how we become fearless is just to become acquainted with what we really are, to become acquainted with the sky-like awareness that is the essence of all of our appearances, no matter what they are. When we become familiar with that, then we really know who we are. And it's very simple. Nothing needs to be changed. Just like in sky, nothing needs to be changed. Nothing needs to be changed about thoughts and emotions and sensations. If we begin to try to manipulate thoughts, emotions, and sensations, we place ourselves squarely in a project of fear. We live our lives as a project of fear. We fear certain of our thoughts, certain of our emotions, and certain of our experiences, and then spend our lives trying to change these things that we fear, that we think we need to get rid of. And so this plays itself out within us as individual human beings, and it also plays itself out in our species, and that we become also a species that's based on fear. And when we look at it in this way, we can see that our response to who we are as a species, or maybe some of us as individuals, is entirely based on fear, or mostly based on fear. And why is this? Because we never hear in a direct and unerring way who we truly are. Most of us only hear about one aspect of who we are, the aspect that says that things exist, that you exist, that you are someone in your own right. And as you are someone in your own right, you have responsibility for this inner torment of thoughts, emotions, and sensations, especially the ones that must always be kept at bay in order to feel that we won't go completely out of control. But the aspect of all of this, no matter what it is that the one inspecting the emotions and the emotions themselves are sky-like. They're sky-like awareness and nothing else. Their label does not have any import or significance whatsoever, as they have never been brought into being in any kind of independent way that gives them the status of power to affect anything. There's no way that they can affect anything. It's just like saying that one part of the sky has more power than another part of the sky. that the cloudy sky has more power than the other part of the sky, and the cloudy sky can somehow change the whole aspect of the sky altogether and have power over it. But this isn't the case. All that is sky is always sky. All that is space is always space. And this is the nature of our being. Just by simply hearing about this, the certainty about it in our own being will dawn. There's nothing that needs to be done. Just hearing its certainty will dawn. Maybe it'll dawn a lot all at once, or maybe it will dawn slowly. It doesn't really matter what it is. It doesn't matter what it is, but to be is to be fearless. So that if we continue to find ourselves fearing what goes on within us, then that is a choice that's been made. It's just a choice about how we're destined to live our life. However, it's only one choice. The reality of our being is always completely available, completely carefree, completely open, completely spacious, and it's never been tied up in any knots. As it's never been made into anything, it's never been knotted anywhere. It's never been flawed. Stainless, flawless sky is forever stainless and flawless. And such is the case with our nature. Just as sky is pure, we are pure. We are sky. Totally pure. When we realize this about ourselves, then we have true well-being. We have true well-being. We no longer fear whatever appears, the angry thought, the happy thought, the regret about the past, the fear about the future. Being fearless, by the way, doesn't mean never to experience a fearful emotion. That's not what it means. It means complete freedom as all fear that arises, with no need to react or respond from fear as being something that can cause one to act. There's nothing that needs to be added to you, and there's nothing that needs to be subtracted from you. Just like in sky, this would be impossible, so too in us. If we try to do that, then we're dealing with the impossible. What we can count on as human beings is that for all of our life, we will have all these appearances of thoughts, emotions, and experiences, and that these appearances will be ceaseless, countless, and unpredictable. We can't determine what they will be in any way. What we can determine is the indestructibility of space. That's what we can determine. That is equal to our own awareness. That is entirely indestructible. So in the indestructible nature of that, to just rest as that and allow that to be in the direct encounter with all experiences is to taste who we really are. To taste who we really are in a definitive way. When for the first time we've had an emotion, an afflictive state that's plagued us all our life, no matter what it might be, anger, pride, desire, fear, sexual fantasies, no matter what it might be. All these things that come up and then we try to change them into something else. Oh, I shouldn't think that, or oh wow, I have to be afraid of that. If that one comes up and I don't do something about it, it'll overpower me. The complete freedom of whatever that thing is already ensured. It's already guaranteed. The freedom of it isn't in manipulating or changing it. There's no freedom in trying to manipulate or change it. What happens if we manipulate or change what appears is that we may neutralize it, but that's the best that'll happen. So we shift into neutral. And neutral is half dead. Neutral is half dead because we're trying to restrain being in some way. So neutral is just nowhere anyone wants to be. Neutral is a lifeless, devitalized way of being. It's completely devitalized. It has no life whatsoever. It has no vitality, no vital energy, no immensely powerful force of being. It's like taking a fire hose and putting it on a beautiful rose. It just completely destroys all beauty to try to manipulate and change what is. Everything that is has a naturally implicit order that's entirely beautiful in and of itself, that's completely filled with vitality and wholesomeness, that is completely filled with just the best that anything could ever be. And it doesn't matter at all what that is, whether it's bhajans or rap music or our emotions or our sensations or our intellect or whatever it is. So please do not go anywhere where you're taught to fear, where you're taught to avoid appearances, to make them better or to replace them with something else. And don't read anything either that tells you to do that. It's just a waste of time, really. It's a complete waste of time and energy. Nothing needs to be changed. You could sit in one place for the rest of your life, or you could be a software engineer at Google, or you could be someone baking bread in Iowa and planting corn. It doesn't matter what you do. There's nothing that needs to be changed. The vitality of being is equal for everyone. It's unbridled. It doesn't have any restrictions or limits whatsoever, because it's never been made into anything. How could there be anything that restricts it or limits it in any way? So this is very important. These things that we've learned are so stable and solid, our thoughts, emotions, sensations, ourselves. These are just things we've learned. They're conventional beliefs. But conventional beliefs, like anything that appears, are completely absent of an independent nature. They have no independent identity whatsoever. Thus, they have no power. They have absolutely no power. If we vest anything with independent identity, then that thing, whatever it is a prison. If we invest thought with independent identity, even thoughts about awareness, it's a prison. If we invest emotions with independent identity and power, then it's a prison. If we invest our sensations with independent identity or power, then that's a prison. To truly know ourselves as we are is to just relax and enjoy the ride. Totally relax and enjoy the ride. There is no wisdom in the grind of thinking. There's no wisdom at all in the grind of thinking, no true wisdom. The obsessive grind of thinking that just thinks in order to describe a world and its beings has no wisdom in it. Once in a while we might muster up a little practical wisdom, but it'll be entirely mundane and bound by laws of cause and effect and the time and place continuum. But the reality of our being is beyond all those things. It's never taken up residence anywhere, because space has never been made into anything. Awareness has never been made into anything. It's never been made into any law, no matter what it is, no matter how exalted or elevated the law may be. Sky-like awareness space has never been made into anything. So it hasn't been made into a law of cause and effect. It hasn't been made into a law of space and time. This is what we can really count on. And in that is true wisdom. If we depend on anything to be, any of these labels or descriptions in order to feel that we are, then it'll be a prison, no matter what it is, because we're dependent on nothing. Our beingness, our awareness, aware pure space is dependent on nothing. It isn't dependent on our heartbeat or breath, or our body even being. How could it be dependent on thoughts and emotions and made up ideas about the way things are? The wisdom power of potent benefit that is the exalted nature of everyone does not require any doing or thinking. It can never be thought into or done into. It already is. So if we're thinking about it or trying to do it, then it's always a step away, because what's looking somewhere else is where we are. It's in what's looking that everything is. Just that wide open seeing of pure space. There's nothing to count on other than that. The moment we count on something other than that, then we're counting upon a mirage. We're counting upon a hologram. We're counting upon something that doesn't have an independent nature. And so whatever we're counting on, it'll be futile. It'll be absolutely futile. So what to do, huh? Just relax and take care of yourself as you are. It doesn't matter what people shout and scream, what the newspapers shout and scream, what television shouts and screams, what the movies shout and scream. It's all a fantasy world. And it can never affect anyone in any way, not unless we let it do that. You know, if we're watching the television news and getting all whipped up into the negativity that's so prevalent there, then that's our choice. But if we just watch all that and completely relax with no need to hold on to any of these descriptions that are being pronounced, announced, denounced, renounced, we get to know who we really are. We're not dependent on any of this. The whole world could blow itself up in an instant and being would be. So why not be familiar with that? Why not be familiar with the indestructible nature of our own being? In California, I live in a beach town, and a small beach town. One of the beaches there, every year at low tide, someone comes down and they build out of sand this incredibly intricate Buddha. And it has every detail and nuance of the most elaborate Buddha you would ever find anywhere, in marble or bronze or gold or whatever it might be. So great care is taken for many, many hours in building this Buddha. And it's really magnificent to behold. It's about this high, so it really has a solid presence. But there's nothing to hold on to. Then you can just watch the tide come in and slowly the Buddha disappears. All of that painstaking doing and effort was never required for Buddhahood. There's no need to make anything into anything. Whatever it is no matter how solid it seems, it's won't continue to be. Just like Adrian's tattoos there. Hold up your arm, Adrian. Mm-hmm. Tattoos now. Not even those tattoos will continue to be.
My skin was originally black. All the roundings were
Basic space is the ultimate symbol. It's the ultimate symbol, the ultimate metaphor. All other symbols that appear within it are space-like, no matter what they are. Doesn't matter what they're labeled. They have no significance in their own right.
Ramana Maharishi, who talked about awareness, self-inquiry all his life, he said there are two paths. One is the path of inquiry and the other is the path of surrender, devotional.
The one is inquiry and one is devotional?
Yeah, the path of surrender. So most of the world's religions have been based around bhakti, around surrender to God. We say everything happens by God's will. Isn't that the same thing as what you're saying?
Well, I don't know whether it's the same thing as what I'm saying, because what you just said could be interpreted differently by so many people, and however they interpreted it or wrote about it, then that would be their interpretation. What is important about the great freedom is that it doesn't hold to anything. It's that is the predominant awareness of everything. So if we talk about God, or we talk about devotion, or we talk about any of these things, then it's awareness that is the root of that. Awareness is the root of everything. If we start to get wrapped up in the labels, then immediately we've made something that we want to rely on as a label or a description. And that's all right, of course, but the simplicity of who we are doesn't require that. It's best to know the simplicity of who we are in a very direct way and then make decisions about those other things, like what other people have written. When we rely on the concepts and the analysis of others, then we only know about those concepts. We only know about that analysis. When we rely on our own direct experience, then we rely on the direct experience of our own being. So this is certainly what was suggested by Ramana Maharshi, in essence. And even though he taught devotion and inquiry, he taught many other things as well. These are just two things that interpreters of Ramana Maharshi have said about him and focused on. But you know, many of these things that we read that were written by Ramana Maharshi or other beings, they were translated into English or other languages, and They were translated by people who didn't even know Ramana Maharshi, or if they did, they were still just interpreting what he said. So you see, we can't really know. We can't really know. All we know is that when we see someone like Ramana Maharshi, we know, wow, that's who I am. That's what we really experience. That's the experience to count on. What in our own being is that experience of being? And then to just rely on that, to rest as that, and allow that to be the case for us. In that, all inquiry is ended.
Thank you.
There are many ideas about things, but many of these ideas came up in a world that was much different than today's world, so that people were living in very isolated geographical circumstances. Even the country of India was a very isolated geographical circumstance, or any other country, until not that long ago. Only within the last 100 years could we begin to travel freely. And we had no way as a human population to communicate with each other either. 100 years ago, no telephones, certainly no internet, and all of these things are rapidly changing. So now we're more of a global human culture, and this will become more and more predominant. So isolated cultures will just disappear as all things disappear. All things are subject to the law of impermanence, no matter what they are. And the greatest traditions, the greatest cultures, the greatest spiritual ways of seeing, the greatest non-spiritual ways of seeing things, all of these will completely disappear. So today, as we have this open communication with each other, it's very important to speak about who we are in a simple way that we can all understand, everyone all over the world, without making it into anything, without either overcomplicating it or oversimplifying it. To oversimplify it is to just say, well, only awareness is. Everything is awareness. That means all my thoughts, my emotions, I'm awareness, and now I can do whatever I want. Well, you see, this isn't an intellectual assumption. That's not what beingness is. It isn't an intellectual assumption. So that's oversimplification. To really become familiar in our own being with the reality of the indivisibility of awareness and the emptiness of all things. In our own being, to be only that, that's what true freedom is. And that is inseparable from flawless wisdom that is potently beneficial. So if we just look for mental freedom, we have some sort of freedom, but it isn't real freedom. Real freedom is beyond that. It transcends all labels, such as mental freedom. The real nature of every single human being is exalted. The great powers of potent benefit are the real nature of every human being. The kind of benefit that comes from transcending, from going beyond all labels, from going beyond all intellectual speculation, with no need to hold to anything. This that is completely beyond all conventional thinking, all conventional beliefs, all beliefs about past, present, and future. This is our own freedom. This is the great freedom. If we continue to try to hold on to conventional ideas, that'll lead us nowhere. It's only in our own being that we can come to a definitive conclusion about who we are. We need that for ourselves as individuals, and we need it all together, for everyone all together, all over the globe. We really need this very much. So the mandate is to speak of this in a way that everyone can understand, with no one left out, in a way that is so simple and direct that just by hearing, conviction will dawn. Just by hearing, certainty will dawn with nothing else needing to be done. We already are who we are, so when we hear about it, we respond, we feel that opening, and we feel that opening because it already is who we are. And although we've had one thing perhaps affirmed about ourselves for a very long time, we've believed things about ourselves just from having those things affirmed. Do you see what I'm saying? Over and over and over again. And so when we have our true nature affirmed in a completely unerring way that's totally supported, to help us see through, to help us cut through all appearances as awareness, then it's guaranteed. You know, it's absolutely guaranteed. I see this not only in myself and my own experience, but in the experience of many others. When we live lives on planet fear, you know, where we're fearing everything, then we always consider ourselves as flawed. Most of us don't really feel that we can achieve our dreams or that we can have any power to affect change, when all of the while within us we are all powerful and all knowing. But that's just philosophy until we begin to experience it in our own being. And when that's experienced in our own being, then sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, we begin to know that we are the exalted flawlessness of awareness itself. That we don't have to plan, we don't have to worry. That even if we do make a plan, we don't have any attachment to that plan. We can make a great, tremendous plan and then with equally tremendous fluidity carry it out, because we don't hold to any expectation of the way things will be. This is the fluid nature of all knowingness, the natural order of all knowingness. So you see, this is a very important matter. It's really an important matter. There's no one who's ever been left out. Not ever. And there's no one who will ever be left out. Everything that is wholly positive and pure just as it is. But continuing to approach everything through the laws of saying good and bad, good and evil, this is good, this is evil, this is beneficial, this is harmful, that's a very limited existence. Beyond all that is exalted existence, beyond the need to rely on labels of good and bad. The wholly positive of good is the wholly positive of bad. And that wholly positive nature is beyond good and bad. It's beyond cause and effect. In its own wisdom, there is absolute flawlessness that does not need to rely on labels of good and bad. Its wisdom is beyond the need to call anything either. And this is very simple. It's the great simplicity of the wisdom body of aware pure space. Something more about that, Mansoor? Mm-hmm.
Candace, I was wondering about discriminative intellect, thinking. So I look around and I see things that are in their nature, the sky, the monkey, the tree. However, as a human being, I feel like I've been given a mind, given the ability to discriminate, make choices, to think. If that thinking, if that discriminating, if that attaching ideas, thoughts, emotions to things is what gets me in trouble, why do I have it?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, that's a good question. You have it, and you also have the choice to do anything you want with it. So what we're taught, we're born as totally flawless awareness, and then what we learn is that when thoughts come up, we're talking about thinking now, so we'll talk specifically only about thinking. When thoughts come up, we're taught to hold to the thought as though it means something, and then discriminate about the thought, deciding whether it's good or bad, something to accept or reject. So this process of discrimination leads us into a certain kind of lifestyle that will have a certain kind of thinking attached to it. Like you said, discriminative intelligence that is within the realm of cause and space, time and effect, good and bad. So that's one choice that we all have. We have a choice to go along with that thinking. And the other choice we have is to not go along with that thinking. So in the other choice, I didn't say there is no thinking. I didn't say that at all. I said thinking becomes exalted. So no longer is thinking based on puny concepts like good and bad. Puny, that means weak and unable to act. Puny. It's when we get to know the basis of all that thinking with no need to hold any of it. Awareness is the root of all thinking. In that awareness, that pristine awareness alone, that is the basis of all thinking and the entire basic space of all thinking, that is completely beyond labels, in that is the kind of thinking that is truly free thinking. And so one you would call discriminative intelligence, the intelligence that discriminates. The other is all-knowing intelligence, supreme intelligence, peaceful intelligence that has no need to discriminate because it understands the nature of all things. It understands the nature of all phenomena. So you see, this is the choice that you have, to go down one road or the other. Now, in all-knowing intelligence, peaceful intelligence, supreme intelligence, the discursive intellect can be employed and used, but it's not the only thing depended upon. You see, all the thought structures, whatever they are seen completely as they are. They're known completely as they are in a definitive way. And they no longer are the basis for arriving at decisions. They're just tools. That's all. And so in the former case, discriminative intellect, discursive intellect, what comes about is a very limited range or scope of thinking. With the other, the thinking is the thinking of wide open space. And so because there's no tie to any label, including any conventional thinking about anything, including your own thinking up to that point. Do you see what I'm saying? There's no tie to any kind of structure as needing to be the way it is in order to proceed. There's no dependency on that. There's always free, wide open thinking with no need to depend on anything. And so within that, there are tremendous solutions to all kinds of problems that could never come about only through discriminative or discursive intellect. Do you understand that? Would you like to ask anything else about it?
No, I'll just think about that.
Well, now here's an example. Okay, say that think whatever you want, just know that thinking will never get you anywhere. And then when you croak, that means when you die, you'll be thinking about that a lot too, and there'll be no way to get out of that. And the thinking won't be pretty, it'll be scary. So, but if something comes up in us, whatever it is, fear, anger, or whatever it might be, and we start to think about it, then we really limit our range of solutions. Or, just like you're a computer consultant, or you have been up to this point. So say, and what kind of computer consulting do you do?
It's more finding talent, placing computer engineers with companies.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, in your field, if you approach your task in a certain way, in other words, the way you've always approached your task, then you have the limit of that range of options. But if you begin to get more familiar with just awareness, the ground awareness of all of this thinking, then you come up with a much wider range of solutions. Or say, you have a personal problem and you try to approach it through psychology of any kind, then everything about that problem is going to be limited by the conventional beliefs of psychology. What you think about psychology and what the people that you talk to think about psychology. And so it's all within the realm of cause and effect, that these emotional states are caused and now they need to be affected by someone in some way. So everything takes place within cause and effect and is rooted in that rather than in the uncaused. So you see, that's the choice you make. Whereas in the great freedom, there's no need to rely on any constructs like that, because the freedom itself, forever stainless, flawless freedom, all approaches, all conventional methodologies are subsumed in that. And then all kinds of new approaches are seen. So any kind of thing that's been pursued through a psychological means, it begins to look like a struggle. It's just an unnecessary struggle to make something out of something. In flawless awareness, all psychological constructs and their meaning are completely gone beyond forever. So it isn't a matter of just kind of tuning up the psychology, replacing one state with another state, a better, more optimal state. It's the resolution of all states. And this is so with thinking or psychology or whatever it is about ourselves. In just the flawless nature of our own being, which is wide open space, that's all there is in the direct encounter with everything. Complete perceptual openness in all experience. Complete perceptual openness in our thinking, complete perceptual openness in our emotions, and this is the guarantee of our own freedom that's outside all philosophical systems and constructs. All philosophical systems and constructs are subsumed. They're included and contained within this greater category of aware pure space. So it's just a matter of what we choose, really. It's as simple as that. And to get into any particular way of thinking about it just limits. So if we say, well, who chooses, or is there anyone choosing? You see, either way, then we hold on to something. Who's choosing? Or there's no one choosing, or then we get into all these mentations about everything. Whereas awareness, it doesn't need to hold to anything. It doesn't need to hold to there being a chooser, there being no chooser. It doesn't need to hold to there being a doer, or there being no doer. These are just oversimplified extremes of philosophy that attempt to describe something. Awareness doesn't need any of these contrived expressions in order to be understood and decisively experienced. Yeah. It's just like sitting right here, the complete openness of everything just as it is. This is what's always the case. It doesn't matter what's going on. Anywhere, anytime, anyone, all completely wide open. When this process that I described of holding to appearances and then discriminating about them, seeking to describe whether they're positive or negative, and then choosing and throwing ourselves into that state, when that takes place, it engenders a complete absence of true compassion for ourselves or for other people. It's only in the absence of reification, the need to make everything into something, which is the need to make everything into something, and then holding to that, it's only in the absence of that there is true compassion. And that's relentless, unstoppable compassion, totally wide open love that cannot be stopped. It's the most immense force of everything that is. So you see, when we continue to discriminate about everything, then we cut ourselves off from compassion, compassion for ourselves, and true compassion for others. That's equal to love. The ability to love, the capacity to love, the true capacity to love without any boundaries, where no one is a stranger, and whereby it becomes unthinkable, truly unthinkable, to engage in ways that would be harmful. So, when we stop describing through simply relaxing as our own awareness, what we begin to see is the pain and suffering of ourselves and the pain and suffering of everyone else. So we start to see how living this life based on discriminating about everything, how it has caused us so much pain and suffering. It causes us incredible pain and suffering to be with ourselves in this way. And then we're constantly struggling for something better, some better way to deal with it, or some perpetual moment of happiness which never arrives. And that is a very limiting existence when we treat ourselves in that way. When we just simply rest as the awareness that's at the basis of everything, then we begin to see a whole other world. We see the pain and suffering we've caused ourselves, and in doing that, we start to feel a spontaneous and automatic connection with everyone. So no longer are we putting all our juice and energy into our own personal needs, whatever they are, feeding ourselves, having a place to live, clothing ourselves, working, recreating, having relationships. We don't have this obsessive self-focus any longer. When we start to see the pain and suffering our own inner processes and discriminating about them has caused us, then we start to see that for everyone. We start to see, wow, everyone needs to eat, not just me. Everyone needs to eat. And these things start to really have meaning to us, profound meaning. That the absence of self-focus is one of all-inclusiveness, of profound all-inclusivity. And so just a simple example like that, always focusing on feeding ourselves and sheltering ourselves and just getting to know our own awareness. We see how to do that in an optimal way for ourselves, but we no longer say, I've got to have this for myself and I'm ignoring everybody else. We start to really see and have a strong emotional connection with the reality that most of the world's people don't have enough food to eat. You know, only 85% of us do. And many people don't have shelter, not even a place to be at night, or, you know, barely have a few rags to wear. And in fact, many people are starving to death every day. So we, instead of these just being facts that we kind of gloss over when we hear about them or feel powerless about, we start to have that strong connection of compassion that is the force and power to affect change of some kind. So, you know, then we start to see all kinds of solutions that are beyond the conventional. When we just swim around in our own thinking all of our lives, that's all we see. The cosmic soup is way beyond that. Enjoy the feast, you know, enjoy the feast of nothing. Enjoy the feast of empty space. Yum, yum.